Yeah, what do we have here? Haha, a little more meat for the barbecue.
Hey guys, what's going on? Chris here with Shughead Gaming, and here is my review for Song in the Smoke, a narrative-driven survival game built from the ground up for VR that takes some of the best ideas from the survival genre and lets you loose in a prehistoric world with only your wits and the forest around you to survive with. Guys, this game for me is in the running for VR Game of the Year, so make sure you stick around and find out why. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button, leave a comment, and hopefully by the end of this video, I will have earned your subscription. And yeah, you guys know the deal, hit that bell icon. Okay, let's talk graphics. Right off the hop, Song in the Smoke goes for a highly stylized art style, something akin to what we see in Borderlands or the more recently released Tarzan VR. Contrary to popular belief though, this is in fact not cel shaded and actually appears to be proper textures that have had the detail turned down, then given accents and outlines to give the game that almost graphic novel appearance. This in turn is treated with a dynamic lighting system, and the result is a game that may not be bursting with real world details, but looks great in the headset across the PC, Quest, and PSVR. But of course, the three versions aren't without their differences, so let's talk about that. Now, while Song in the Smoke is split into 8 different areas, these areas aren't small and are in their own right smaller open world maps that at times can show off some impressive draw distances. As such, I must say that the Quest version with having to run on the weakest hardware is an absolute visual marvel that 17-bit has managed to pull off. Being rebuilt entirely for the Quest in order to navigate its shortcomings and play on its strengths, this game could easily be one of the most impressive games currently on the Quest, and truly puts the recently released A Township Tale to shame, delivering a similar open world yet without that game's excessive use of pop-in, fovea rendering, drop-in detail, or removal of the game's dynamic lighting system as seen on the PC. Now, to be fair, all these shortcomings can be seen to a slight degree in Song in the Smoke, as these are simply to be expected, but they are used sparingly and the result is a port that still very much looks like the other versions. However, the Quest version does suffer from heavier use of the game's fog effects, no doubt to make this all work. But in an odd turn, the game is also much less dynamic in its color palette and isn't helped by the slightly lower texture detail and heavier fog, which when combined does give Song in the Smoke on the Quest a bit of a dreary look when compared with the other versions. However, if you only have a Quest, don't let this dissuade you, as this never gets in the way of the gameplay or the fact that this is an incredible visual achievement on the Quest. Moving on to the PSVR and PC versions, the PC is not surprisingly the best looking version of the game and can be downright beautiful, even if it might have been held back a bit by the need to have a consistent look across all three versions. That being said, the PSVR version is no slouch and appears to be much of a muchness to the PC version, presenting the same level of texture detail with only a slight increase in the usage of fog. Regardless, the PSVR version is a great presentation of the game with only its display resolution holding it back slightly with a slightly fuzzy look to everything. Getting away from the specifics of the versions, I loved the overall look of this game, and putting on the headset and returning to the world often felt like putting on a warm blanket fresh out of the dryer. Level design, while at first may come off a bit minimalistic and admittedly samey as you progress through the game's 8 maps, it does begin to reveal itself to be much more complex upon further inspection, with maps containing many nooks and crannies, elevation changes, and visually unique areas that at first can all look the same, but over time can become visual signposts for where you are in the world, allowing you to rely less on your map. Wildlife in the game, like the game world itself, is highly stylized, but works and looks really great, with creatures both friendly and not, obviously being inspired by real-world animals, but with their own twist. Animations are on point though, and as a result this world can truly feel inhabited, which only further contributes to the high level of polish and care that has obviously gone into Song in the Smoke. For, as I will mention later on as well, this game has obviously been made by a team of developers that know what works and doesn't work in VR, where corners can be cut and where they can't, in order to maintain the immersiveness of the world we're playing in. And visually, they have really succeeded here across all 3 headsets. Sound is up next. And that care and attention I spoke about that is so evident across the game's visuals, well, that's present here as well throughout the audio side of things. First up, I want to talk about the excellent music design here in Song in the Smoke, as it truly is a living entity throughout the game, as it not only ebbs and flows throughout the game as it dynamically changes to what is happening to you, but the game also uses music and musical cues to inform the player of mission objectives and impending harm coming your way. Like, for example, each map consists of 3 points of light which you must find and interact with. These can often be seen shining straight up into the sky off in the distance, but when you're deep in the jungle cover and unable to see these markers, the music will shift to be almost an audio signpost when you're in the vicinity of one of these POIs. But while the music plays a prominent role in the game, it also knows when to sit back in the mix, helping to create an often magical, sometimes ominous vibe to the whole game world, while simultaneously letting the sounds of this living jungle free to envelop you. And that's probably my next favorite part of the game, in that where the visuals may not truly deliver the feeling of a densely and detailed living world, the world sounds do, and surround you with the intense nuances of the natural world around you, while also effectively making the maps sound much larger than their square footage might allow for. World sounds are also dynamic though, and the shift between the forest at day to the forest at night by the comforting crackle of your campfire can be a very different sonic experience, and especially so when you consider whatever the music might be doing behind the mix, and consequently creating an extremely unnerving experience when you find yourself without fire and alone in the forest. Especially once you get to the third map and you discover that things that go bump in the night now find you to be a delicious treat. Speaking of which, creature sounds are also done nicely here, with the game taking real advantage of the positional capabilities of 3D audio, especially helpful when stalking a prey and listening for the pitter-patter of their footies, or consequently being stalked yourself by an alpha predator that heard you were an all-you-could-eat buffet. And that brings us to gameplay. Full disclosure, I am a huge fan of the survival game genre and have played just about anything worth playing, either flat or VR. As such, I would consider myself to be well versed on this type of game, and consequently also going into this game with high expectations that I expected it not to meet. And I was wrong. So very wrong. A Song in the Smoke actually really delivers. Being a narrative-driven survival game, you aren't simply dropped into the game and expected to simply survive as long as you can. Instead, Song in the Smoke reminded me of one of my favorite survival games, The Long Dark, in which that game's story mode provided a reason to keep moving forward, completing basic tasks, all the while participating in the game's survival mechanics in order to live long enough to see the credits roll. Song in the Smoke takes a similar approach, breaking its story, steeped in native mythos and imagery, into 8 separate maps, with each map having a similar mission structure, asking the player to find 3 points of interest, and then once located, tasking the player with a special creature, which must be hunted in order to open the portal to the next world, and advance the almost fever dream story sequences that further your spiritual journey. Personally though, I didn't really care about the story though, as I was there for the gameplay, and make no doubt about it, this is a survival game. And while it may not be as hardcore or in-depth as some of the games in the genre that it seems inspired by level 3 it was certainly starting to become a challenge to this survival game veteran in all the best possible ways. Starting out, the game gives you a decent rundown of the game's basic mechanics and takes you through making some of the game's core tools such as a knife, a club, a torch, among other basics. Most important of which is your cloak, which is used to hold and organize your supplies. Similar to how supplies were handled in the forest, but much simpler. It's here that you can also get a detailed overview of your status effects, fatigue, hunger, and the time of day. Now, I have to congratulate the developers for, like I said prior, this team really understands good VR game design, and like the PSVR exclusive Frack before it, has taken game mechanics that all too often feel janky and awkward and streamlined them into something that makes playing the game a true pleasure to play. Besides your cloak, which can be pulled out by the push of a button, you can assign a primary tool to both your right and your left hand for quick access outside of the inventory menu. Once crafted, your quiver can be then attached to your cloak and will hold your crafted arrows, which can be easily accessed by simply arming the bow and reaching for the bowstring and arming the bow. And the game is filled with many little decisions like this that made executing tasks fun and easy. Crafting wise, the game walks a fine line between offering enough depth and detail to satisfy gamers like me looking for a complex survival game to bite into, but not so complex and grindy so as to put off newcomers to the genre or those who simply don't wish to chop wood for a few hours on end to beef up their supplies. In fact, there isn't much of a grind at all to Song in the Smoke, as most of your supplies like rocks and branches, which come in a multitude of sizes, are found and collected on the jungle floor, cliff faces, or riverbeds, and again in a fashion similar to The Long Dark, doing away with any need to partake in mining or chopping of trees, something that I don't mind in survival games, but I know many find to feel like chores. Crafting recipes, besides the few that are given to you in the tutorial part of the game, are designed to be discovered through trial and error, and not just given to you. However, once you understand the fundamentals of the game's crafting system, it all feels pretty intuitive, as each size of stone or branch essentially can be carved or broken down into an item that can then be assembled with other items found in the world, which, if you have them in your cloak, will actually glow to notify you that you can do something with them in regards to the item that you have in your hand. And if you have enough bark bindings, a resource you get by carving up basically any piece of wood you find in the game, and the correct items are brought together, they will automatically assemble in your hand. Now, like any good primitive, mastering of the fire is essential to your survival, both for light and warmth. As such, one of the first things you will need to do when entering a new area is create a campfire, or 2, or 3, as these are where you will find safety from predators and the cold, in addition to being a place where you can build some basic contraptions, such as a drying rack for pelts where you can craft clothing among other things, and a storage pack that will allow you to access extra supplies from any campfire across the game, providing you've crafted the storage pack at any given campfire. Campfires are a key game mechanic here in Song in the Smoke, as like real fires, they must be built with kindling and maintained with an ample supply of wood to make it through a night and a good night's sleep to avoid exhaustion. As such, maintaining wood supplies is key, as not only does your fire use a lot at night, but all your tools wear out over time and require you to replace them regularly. This and hunger will be your key concerns, and that is where hunting becomes a necessity in the game, as downed creatures will not only provide meat, but also pelts, bone, teeth, and guts, all key crafting materials that you will need to survive. Now, as the game progresses and you enter into new areas, you will come across better materials. So while the game may have a limited amount of crafting recipes for you to worry about, you will need to continually upgrade your tools, clothing, and weapons to keep pace with the increasingly dangerous wilderness, which, in addition to offering up more vicious creatures, also means more hazardous weather that will rain out your fire and drop temperatures. And while this game loop may not appeal to everyone, this is absolutely my jam, and it's pulled off excellently here with a nice and steady difficulty curve that kept me on my toes throughout the almost 20 hours it took me to reach the end. Yes, this is not the quick 5-hour campaign we are used to getting in VR. For while you could theoretically rip through the objectives in each of the 8 areas, survival is the key here, and you simply won't unless you strategically plan on how to use both your days and your nights efficiently as possible without running out of food, wood, medicinal plants, or any number of other things while you gear up to move forward. Song in the Smoke requires the use of 2 motion controllers and can easily be played either sitting or standing, with a moderate amount of room recommended, as you will most definitely be reaching out to swing at things. As a full locomotion title, VR sickness could of course be a thing for some, but in addition to the climbing in the game being actually teleportation only, there are a multitude of comfort settings for those who need them. And finally, that brings me to fun factor in my final review. Song in the Smoke isn't the hardest or the most complex survival game out there. At times, I did find myself wishing it was a bit more robust, with a deeper crafting system and the ability to build shelters. For as it is, the game kind of runs out of recipe progression after just the first few levels. However, what the game does, it does well, and completely shocked me with just how good it was, not only as a survival game, but for how it implemented this genre in VR, which in my opinion is VR masterclass level of game design in both its graphical and musical execution, but also in its control, UI, and gameplay mechanics. In fact, I enjoyed playing Song in the Smoke so much that it will definitely be in the running for VR Game of the Year for me. As you guys may know, I hate numbered review scores and instead rate games on the basis of buy it, burn it, or wait on it, as well as some info on who this may appeal to more. So this is definitely a buy for me, and at $30 is also an incredible value for time, as this is not a short VR title. Now, of course, if you hate survival games and simply find them stressful, there's no two ways about it, guys. For besides some fun bow combat, this is a tried and true survival game. However, it does do away with much of the grind that the genre can be known for. So for those concerned with spending hours chopping down trees or mining rocks, the game does a good job of making gathering a part of the experience rather than just a chore. Guys, this is Premium VR and maybe my biggest surprise of 2021, and this is a game that I strongly recommend you take the journey on, regardless of what headset you own. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know if this is something you're interested in picking up, why not, and of course, if you aren't already, please consider subscribing, guys, and as always, I'll catch you guys on my next video.